All right, hey guys, this is Algebra 1 for Thursday, April 2nd. This is on page 357. So we're going to turn to page 357. All right, hope you all are doing well with everything. Again, if you have any questions with it, just get with me, contact me so we can get it cleaned up. So today's lesson is on histograms. And so histogram when we get to it is going to function basically like a bar graph. And so if you kind of understood the bar graph lesson, then this lesson won't be very difficult at all. And so histograms, okay, they're going to give you a list of data. Now, here's the cumbersome part, which means the very just tedious, the kind of part we don't like. For this to work, you really need your list of data in least to greatest for a lot of these lessons. For this one, you don't necessarily have to have it from least to greatest. It's more beneficial if you have it that way. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to look at we're going to look at a bracket, a span of numbers, and then we're going to say how many times does this span of numbers occur. And so for this one, basically what I'm going to look at is I'm going to look at my 10s to 19. So I'm going to do my ages 10 to 19. Okay, so that'll be one span of numbers. Then I'm going to look at my ages for 20 to 29. That'll be one span. So then next would be obviously 30 to 39, and then 40 to 49, and then 50 to 59. And so that are just my age brackets, my spans, my groupings, okay, my classes. And so what happens now is I'm just going to count up how many would fit into that category, into that class, into that span. And so if I go from 10 to 19, I'm going to count how many numbers I see between 10 and 19. So I see 1, so I can kind of mark it out. 12 I see, that's 2. 14 would be 3, and then I get to 21. So I saw 3, so on the frequency part of this table, I'm going to put 3. So notice for these, you don't necessarily have to have it from least to greatest, because I could have just looked for all the 10s to 19 I see, and then cross it out to make sure I counted it. But if it's already in least to greatest, it makes it easier. And so just go and see and then cross it out. And so I have 3 of them, so I crossed them out, and I put 3 in my frequency. Okay, the next is my 20 to 29. And so I'm going to look at my set of data and count and see how many are in between 20 to 29 and cross them out as I go. So 21, that's 1, 23 is 2, 27 and 3, 28 gives me 4. And so I have 4 of them, and so I'm going to label this one with 4. Okay? Now, that gets that set, so then I'm going to go 30 to 39. So I'm going to look up here and count that. So 30 to 39, I have a 31, and I have a 32, and that's all for the 30s. So I have 2. Okay, then I'm going to do 40 through 49. Notice I have no 40 to 49, so that'll be 0. And then I have 50 through 59, and that has 1, 2, 3, 4, I'll add another one just to get a different number, 5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in this case. And so that would be 5. And so this is called a frequency table. What a frequency table does is it allows you to tell how many times you have a number in that class, in that range. So the class would be 10 to 19. That's the range, 10 to 19. Class is the definitional term. So 10 to 19 would be the class 1. My class 2s or 20s would be 20 to 29. My class 3 or 30s here would be 30 to 39. Class 44 would be 40 to 49. And your class 5 would be your 50 to 59. And so I have 3 for this one, 4, 2, 0, and 5. And so that is a frequency table. So that goes through on page 357 and shows you the frequency distribution table. Okay? Now, what we're going to do, I need you to flip to page 358. So 358, flip there. Okay? 358 gives you an example of a histogram. And so what a histogram does is a bar graph, basically, except it doesn't tell you the individual number. And so, like when I'm fixing to make this histogram, it's not going to actually show me the 12. It's not going to show me which one of those it is. it's just going to show me that there were 3 of them in that range. And so it doesn't tell you the particular data value, it just tells you how many were in the class, in that gap, in that spread range. And so if you look on page 358, they give you their own histogram here. So notice they can count up and see how many are in each range based off that as well. And so what I'm going to do with the information I have on the board here is I'm going to go ahead and make the histogram for this one. And so you have the examples in your book there that you can look at, and then you're going to have the example that I'm going through to create right here. And so the first thing you have to do to create a histogram is do the frequency table, the frequency chart. That way you know how many occur in each class, and then we can do our histogram. And so the histogram is like a bar graph, and so I'm going to do my bar here, okay? This down here is going to be, the bottom is going to be your ranges, your classes. And so I'm going to start at 0 and go to 10, or you can start at 10 here, it doesn't really matter. So I'll go 0 to 10, then I'll go 10 to 20, then I'll go 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, and then 50 to 60. And so that'll be that bottom. That is the actual ages. So this is my ages. Then coming up is going to be the frequency. And so I'm going to say this one right here is going to be the frequency. So frequency, how many times it occurs. And so if you look, I had none for 0 to 10, so that stays fine. And then for 10 to 19, I had 3. And so 10 to 19, I had 3. So when I go up here, so when I go up in the 10 to 20 gap, because that's the range, 10 to 19, so it'll go right to here, what you're going to do is you're going to shade up that bar for how many times that represents. And so that was 3, so I'm going to shade to 3 basically right here. And so I'm going to shade this whole thing up to 3. Okay? Now my 20 to 30, I had 4 for 20 to 29. So my 20 to 30 here is going to shade up to 4. So I'm going to shade up to 4. For this one. So that shades up to 4, because there were 4 of them that happened between 20 and 30. Now 40 to 49 was 0. 30 to 39 is next. So here I would shade 2. Forty to 49 was none. And then over here 50 to 60 was 5. So I would shade all the way up to 5 on this one. So the first thing I want you to notice is that you're shading how many of them you had in each category. And so when I'm just looking at this information, I don't know what the particular number was 10 through 20. I don't know if it was 11, if it was 13, if it was 15. Just looking at this table, I don't know what the exact measurement was, but I know there were 3 of them from 10 to 20, 10 to 19. And so there were 3 of them there. I don't know exactly what they were, but I know there were 3 of them. So what this allows you to do, once you have it done, is you can basically look at this and you can say, okay, which class had the most ages? Which class had the most ages, just looking at the histogram? Well, the bar graph that went the highest was the 50 to 60, 50 to 59. And so that is going to be the class that had the highest. So class 5, class 50s, the 50s, would have the highest number of people in that age group. Okay? If I asked you for which one had the lowest in terms of ages, which class had the lowest in terms of ages, you would look and you would look for the shortest bar graph that you made. And so the lowest would be this one in the 30s. So from 30 to 39, you would only have, it says 2. So that would be the lowest. And so that's basically how you're going to function on these, is you're just looking for how many in each class you have, and then you're creating the bar graph, which is called a histogram when you're thinking about frequencies. Since the only difference between a histogram and a bar graph is a bar graph gives you the particulars. The bar graph would actually show you having the number age 14 on the bar graph. for a frequency table with a histogram like this, it's not going to tell you the particulars, it's just going to tell you the frequency within a range, within a class. And so that's the only difference. And so that's how we're going to function on it. Now, like I said, if they give you this list of numbers not in order, then you may want to order them, or you can just kind of go start at your lowest one and see how many in each, cross them out as you go. You need to rank them for most of these lessons, least to greatest. This one you don't necessarily have to, but you just need to make it organized where you can make sure you know how many in each class, in each category, in each range you have. And so that should get you started with that. One thing you need to look at too is look on page, where are we at? Look on page 360. So page 360 gives you a couple examples here of different histograms. So notice you have symmetric distributions and asymmetric distributions. So this is on page 360. Basically, a symmetric distribution means you can cut it in half and you have the exact same thing on one half of the histogram as you do on the other half. So if you look at the symmetric distributions on the page, you can cut them in half. See how you have that first one is kind of steeping up the ladder, gets to the very middle, and then it starts going down at exactly the same. So it's basically a mirror image if you were to cut that in half, left and right. So that's going to be a symmetric. Look at the next one there. Notice it kind of comes up, comes down, but it does the same thing on both sides of the middle. So that's symmetric when it looks exactly the same on both sides of the middle. Now look at the asymmetric, just means there's no order to it. It's just randomly distributed. It can come up and come down, but if you were to cut it in half, you don't have the mirror image on both sides. And so that is an asymmetric distribution there. So look at those. Those give you a good illustration of what those look like. So basically for this, the homework is going to be, where am I at? It's going to be page 361, 362, and it's going to be 1 through 6. Now, number 1 and 2, you're creating, really 1, 2, 3, and 4, you're creating the histogram. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, I need to see your histogram. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look at your data. You may want to list them least to greatest, that may help you, but at any rate, just go through. First, you want to set up your actual classes, so set up the actual range. Generally, it's by tens. So generally, it's always going to be like 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29. It's usually that's going to be how we do it. So that would help you. Notice number 2, you may want to set up a different class because they actually give you the, so like number 2, they give you the 3s, the 4s, the 5s, and how many repeat themselves. So you may want to do an actual frequency for 3. So actually start your chart at 3, tell me how many 3s there are. Then make a chart for 4, tell me how many 4s there are. 5, how many 5s there are. So you can go that way. You have the freedom here to do it however you want to see fit. So there's no set way you have to construct the chart. You can do it however you see fit. We can look at it. But what you need to do is actually create it, and you're just telling me how many of them there are for that section. And so just create it however you see fit, what makes most sense to you. So again, starting out, you want to do the frequency table, at least something like this. You don't have to do this exact one every time, but this is the one that you're taught. You can do tallies, so you can do something like 10 through 19, and then do like 3. So just you have to do something to keep in order what your class is and what your frequency is. That's the main idea for it. So that should get you started. If you look at 5 through 6, 5 and 6, they're actually asking you questions. And so they want to know if it's symmetric or asymmetric. Can you cut it in half and see the same thing on both sides? And then they're asking you actually for which one has the most data values, which one has the least, how many are there for this specific class. And so you just see the frequency and tell me what that is for that. And so that should get you through that. And so it's again 1 through 6 on page 361 and 362. All right, I'll see y'all guys later.